I am Becky Baxter, presenting today on behalf of Down Syndrome UK, thinking about planning for a successful transition. Oh, hang on, I need to go to my other screen. There we go. What we're going to cover kind of in the next hour, we're going to talk a little bit about who is involved and a little bit maybe about their role before we then look at some of the different components that a successful transition plan may include. And of course, depending on who it is, they may be involved in developing, supporting, providing, and certainly reviewing some of those different things. So we're thinking about planning visits. So if you've got a transition visit, we want to know what the plan is for that transition visit, who's in charge of developing that plan. They certainly may need some support from current setting. We'll have a think about a transition book, which I'm sure you'll all be very familiar with, but I shall just touch on that a little bit in terms of some of the extra information that you have in there before we talk about all about me or personal passport or a pupil profile. Thinking about communication, because that's always a really big one. And I think as part of transition, it would be great to think about getting that plan in place, because then it can help to stop any kind of confusion or and set expectations really around what that's going to look like as we move into the new academic year. Talk a little bit about pre-teaching new vocabulary, expectations and skills, because if our students know what to do before they get there, they're much more likely to be successful. And then just a kind of final comment about maintaining that successful inclusion. Once you've transitioned in and we've done the work around transition, how that's going to continue moving forwards. So obviously, we're going to be hopefully all working together. So wherever the child is currently, it's going to be their role to really share as much useful information as possible with the new placement. And that's true whether it is you're moving from a preschool setting into reception, or whether you're moving from year 2 into a junior school, might be a separate school. You might be moving from primary into secondary, or just moving from one class to the next, particularly if you've got new school team, new teacher and or new teaching assistant or classroom assistant or teaching staff or lunchtime supervision staff, whoever's might be a change, we need to be thinking about making sure that they're informed as much as possible about the needs of the child. That information is obviously going to be key to enable the new setting to start to plan to meet the child's needs. And I've been quite surprised over the years by how late some of that planning has started. Often it might even be into the new year and the child's already started in that placement. And sometimes that can mean we're off to a bit of a unsteady start, where that could have been a lot more successful, a lot smoother had these things been put in place. So we'll be thinking about kind of the key skills, knowledge and vocabulary that's going to set pupils up for success. What is it that they need to know about this new setting? What is it the new setting needs to know about them? And that may well all start in your EHCP review meeting. So if you're going to be transitioning from primary to secondary, I would really think about this plan being started to be considered in year 5 when we're thinking about naming our secondary school and what that plan throughout year 6 may look like. And then in your year 6 review meeting, I'd certainly be going, okay, where is our plan for transition? What is it we have in place? If you're going to be starting school, it'll be you're doing that EHCP application most likely. You might have a review meeting depending on how early you had your EHCP put in place. But thinking about, okay, what's moving up, and of course, as you go through the years, you'll be thinking, right, we're going to be moving on to different key stage, new class. What did we do before? What worked really well, or what could we do even better this time? So in terms of ensuring this kind of successful transition, we need to make sure that new people are informed of the child's strengths and their areas of difficulty, what they find a bit more challenging. And certainly lots of these things I would be recommending to the schools that we work with. The first being extra visits. Now we'll all be having visits, part of our transition plan, but for our students, it's probably going to be a few extra visits, and that might be staff visiting the new setting and going, oh, let me see what sort of activity we're going to be doing. This is the sorts of ideas. That's how I would differentiate it. That's what my student's going to need before the student's even there. The student's not there yet, so that when we do go with the student, we know that those things are in place. It's incredible the number of visits we just go, we've got a date, yeah, we're just going to go, we'll go with everybody else in the class and we're going to experience a science lesson. No, we haven't put in any planning or learning objective or resources or plan for the lesson, and then we go, oh, hang on a minute, they're playing with the Bunsen burner. Why is that happening? What are they thinking? Hang on a minute, we should have been all prepared for that initially. Similarly with reception, not quite as I mean, reception visits tend to be a little bit less structured anyway. But if there is going to be a period of sitting on the carpet, it would be great for the student to know that that's going to be what's going to happen. And when they sit on the carpet and it's that really challenging time for them, where they can't access that verbal information, school already know that. And I've come with my supports, or school have identified what supports are going to be involved in that carpet time. So that carpet time is successful from the beginning. And I don't go, well, I don't like this carpet time, I'm going to go off to the book corner, and everybody goes, oh, are they okay over there? Well, yeah, they're not getting into any trouble. And before we know it, we've taught them carpet time. That's the time that you can wander off and do whatever you like. So it's really important to think about planning for those visits, and I shall say even more about that. But that might be then us visiting that new setting, and again, similarly, that setting visiting where they are currently, whether that be at preschool, whether that be at primary school, or in terms of reception, schools will often do visits out to home, but also think about any other groups that you know that the student is attending that would be useful to go and see how they're interacting with their friends in that group. If you're in some of the preschool, we do early development groups locally where the children have been coming, they're used to coming, they're used to sitting, they're used to doing activities, getting schools to come along, new reception teacher to come along, Senko to come along and have a look at the student in those groups is really important. Now I'll talk a bit more, I've already started talking about visits in a lot of detail, and I'm going to talk a bit more about Transition Book, All About Me Personal Passports, which is really where we're thinking about Transition Book's all about us informing the student about the new place, the new expectation. All About Me or Personal Passport is a resource for me to share all about me, give you key information about me to the new setting. And similarly, a shorter version of that might be that pupil profile, which we will look at. And talk a little bit about homeschool communication. I said I would focus a little bit on communication and on supports for communication for the students. They're going to be going and meeting new friends. What are they going to be taking with them to support communication between peers? Okay, so as I said, extra visits need to be planned. We need to have a clear goal, a clear aim for the different parts of the visit, particularly when our pupil is going on the visit up to the new setting. Pupils will be taking things to share. I'm going to go up, I'm going to meet my friends, going to meet the teacher. I want to take something that I can show them. Oh, this is me. Here's an example of my work. Here's some key information about me. Here's my All About Me book that you can have a look through and see some examples of work. It might be I've got a conversation support, like a conversation diary, or I've brought my hobbies card where I can flick through and show you about my hobbies, or this is some information about my family and my friends, what I like to do at school. Any of those conversation starters that you have need to be included as part of that visit. We're going up to meet our friends and teachers. We're going to be thinking about interaction. We want to make it successful right from the beginning. This is a chance for the new setting to see what's being used and works well in the current setting. They might take some questions to ask, particularly not so much maybe in reception, but certainly as we move through school, you might be going to ask something like, where are the toilets? Or what do we do at break time? Or what time is lunchtime? Any of those useful questions that you think, oh, we're going to spend a little bit of time before we go on the visit thinking about what do we want to find out when we get there. Again, we want that plan. Let's practice those questions. How you're going to ask them. You're going to take your little a little notepad or a little kind of clipboard. You're going to practice asking them to some friends here, and then I can practice. Then I know how that's going to work when I get to that new setting. The current setting is also going to need to take any equipment that the child uses in the current school. If they've got a particular chair that they use, that needs to really go with them, be there as part of the visit. They've got particular supports for handwriting, they need to be there as part of the visit. So all of that kind of that's with the child or the pupil at the moment needs to be going and be available as part of the visit. And we really want to find out what is the plan for the activity that we're going to be visiting, and then really share how you would do it. If we were doing a story time at school, if we were doing a science activity at this school, these are the things I would be thinking about. These are the visuals I would have for the equipment. These are the written words for the equipment. This is my social story about transition, which is really useful. So somebody's already gone in and taken some pictures. This is my teacher. I say to my teacher, "Good morning, Mrs. Smith." I can practice all of those things. I can take it with me. I've got it there to use as my supports. The other thing that might happen around visits is that the new setting may well go back to visit the current setting to see how things are working in that setting. I think that's a really useful thing to go and see a lesson taking place, or see the student, the pupil working at preschool, and see how they're included within those different things. Some things might not be working brilliantly, but again, you can think, okay, what can we put in place to make sure that they are? So before we really start to see the pupil doing those visits, making sure that the staff have lots of opportunities to meet with each other, to share key information, to share information about the transition, the visits, to make sure that there is that kind of cohesive plan in place. I mentioned this transition book. I'm sure all schools are familiar with this, and all schools will probably have one. So this is for the child, and it will contain important information which will help them have a positive start. So it would normally have in there your teacher, it would normally have in there any classroom teaching assistants, so I can get to know their names, I can practice their names. Might have any additional support from me. Also might have people like the head teacher in it, and the deputy head teacher in there, and my lunchtime supervisor might be in there. All those people that I'm going to come across, would really like them to be in that book, so I can be then practicing their names. Then I'm going to be more familiar when I get there with who I'm looking for, who I'm asking, who I need to associate with different particular places. This is the lady in reception. This is reception. This is the receptionist. This is her name. I come in that way, I might be speaking to that person, so on. The other thing that's really important to have in there is, and any other important places. So things like, this is the hall, this is where assemblies happen. What is an assembly, and what does that look like for our child? This is where I put my book bag. This is where I hang my peg. This is where my locker is. This is where I can come at lunchtime to the learning support hub. Whatever key places are within the school, let's have some photos of those, have them listed, and some information about them, where I might find them, what I might need them for. And then following on from that, you might also have some important kind of rules or expectations around that new setting. So it might be, in assemblies, this is what an assembly is. I go into the hall with my class, I sit down on the floor with my legs crossed, or I sit in the hall next to my friends, whatever the rule is. Once assembly started, I don't talk to my friends. If I have a question, I put my hand up, so I know when I get to assembly, I'm expected to sit down, I'm expected not to talk, and I'm expected to put my hand up. Because if I know those rules before I wander into the hall and I get up, because I'm used to getting up at in my preschool setting throughout inputs. I go up to the front and there's a teddy up there. I go up and see what he's all about. Oh, yep. Before I do any of those things, we've taught you what you should be doing. So you've got an idea and you've got those visuals in front of you that you can have a look. Take your transition book, go to those times, refer back to it. It's really helpful. And also any kind of key information about what to do or say. So this is my teacher. In the morning, I say, I get to choose lunch. I'll say, today I'm having, or You could have your little sentence strip. They might not be saying any of those things yet. You'd have your sentence strip in there, and then you'd be practicing it. And today, green lunch. Today, red lunch. And I'm used to then having that strip and do some practicing of that in our setting that we had before, or at home even over the summer holidays. Oh, what would you like today? Would you like, I don't know, cucumber sandwich or ham sandwich or green or red? Choose, put it on your sentence strip, practice the sentence strip. So I'm used to knowing how to choose that before you get there. You'd have photos in there in simple sentences so the child can read through, and depending on the age of the child, they could certainly help. When we go to do reception visits, generally all of the adults will be taking the photos, but certainly when I get into doing secondary visits, first thing I want to say is, are you taking with you an iPad or maybe your phone to take some key photos on so we can make that transition book when we get back? And this should be a really positive thing. These are the things that are going to happen in this situation. I certainly wouldn't have in a transition book anything that you don't want to happen, because we don't want to be practicing and thinking about that before we get there. So there's an example there. I will hang my coat up here. There's my peg. I will put my book bag here. Be even more helpful if I know which one it was going in. This is the hall where I eat my lunch. I also come to assembly and PE here. So I'm starting to know hall, and I'm starting to associate what sort of things happen in the hall. So when we say we're going to PE, I'll know where we're going, and I'm not going to necessarily be disappearing or get lost on the way there. So that's a transition book. That's about the place. Then this is all about the child themselves. So we call it an all about me book, or somebody might have some people call it a personal passport. It really has information that we want school staff to know, but it's written in a kind of child friendly way. So if somebody comes and says, oh, I'm working with you today, tell me all about you, I'd get out this book, and then I could look through and tell you some key information. It's normally relatively short and relatively simple, particularly in terms of the language that's used within there. Obviously, relevant staff will have access to the full EHCP and the reports, and anybody who's going to be working closely as part of your child's team is going to have had access and are going to have read all of that information cover to cover and be up to date on the most recent reports. But I've got summer holidays, and it would be really useful to have that key information in a kind of easy access guide within the classroom. So that would include things like important health information. If you had a particular allergy, or you need support at lunchtime because you have issues around choking, something like that. That key information would be in there and would be a refresher for anybody who was new, and whoever was working within the child's team know that book really, really well. Might also have some useful information about current skills. So I quite often will encourage people to have in their examples of work that the child has completed. And if you've been to a previous training of mine, you may well be familiar with some examples of work that the child has completed with support, and a note about the support that they had. So I might say, this writing was completed, supported by my TA. I had help coming up with the ideas, which we wrote on a whiteboard. Then I came up with a sentence and I copywrote it on my own. And then on the next page, you might have this piece of writing I did completely independently. So straight away, I'm going to be working with this child. I look in here and I go, this is the sort of thing when I'm working with you, I'm going to be looking to achieve. And this is the sort of thing I can expect you to be doing completely on your own. Brilliant. I know you do two things. I know you work with support and on your own, and I know what sort of level to be practicing at. It might also have some information in there like, I am working on numbers up to 20, or I am working at I'm looking at 2-digit column addition. So you might have some information in there around current skills. So when I get to the maths lesson, I go, oh yeah, I know we're working on those questions up to 20. It might have information in there about any kind of social supports that I have. So things around communication, things that I have to support me maybe at break time. I have access to a particular sort of play equipment that I know where it is. I know to get it and take it out so that I know it's going to go out there. It might have some information around play. These are the games I'm working at playing. I can choose from one of these games to play with my friends. I ask my friends by using my communication sentence, will you play hopscotch or duck duck goose, or are you coming to computer club, whatever it might be. And there might be some information around there about a behavior system that I use. It might say, I like moving my name up to the sunshine. I can do this when I get 10 ticks or tokens. So we can see we are using the class scheme, but we're also, I can see I'm giving you some extra behavior, using an additional behavior system as part of that to break that down and make it a bit more visual for you. Or it might say, I do collect plus points. I write these in the back of my planner and share them with my mum at the end of the day, something like that. Might also have in there information about resources, particular resources that you use. So if the child is using Numicon, that would be in there. Doing a maths lesson, I know I need to get the Numicon out. It might be any kind of intervention that they're doing if they're using the reading and language intervention for children with Down syndrome. It would have that key information in there. It might have in there, I use a tablet or a sloping writing board, anything like that would go in your useful resources section, and examples of work, as I said. And if you've got some photos of me set up doing my work, that would be great to give me a guide of what this kind of looks like. Oh yeah, I can see you there using your Numicon. Brilliant. So as I said, we'd have photos in there, simple sentences, and that would be a thing that you'd often share with the child. So it's information for me, but it will be can be shared alongside the child. A quick kind of glance of what they're achieving, what to expect. Oh, I've said that already. Told you all about me. Working on their own and work with support. You would have in there as well, I work on my own for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour, whatever. Might have some examples of independent jobs that I do. Or some helping jobs that I might do in the classroom. As we move through school, that would include around a range of different subjects, because obviously if I'm moving up to a new teacher for history, they're probably going to want to see some examples of history work. So I'd have some examples of that in there. Clearly state the amount and type of support provided and what resources have been used. So I said you'd have a list of those in there, but when you've got those examples of work, it would be really useful for new staff to go, okay, I can see working on numbers to 20, works with the Numicon, or adds using a number line, or whatever is the useful key information about the support that's been provided in the past that would support successful transition as we move forward, and those resources. And then you might also have a pupil profile, which is really the short version, a one-page version of the child's particular difficulties, challenges, and all their strengths as well. Might have information about communication supports that you use, mobility difficulties that they have, how long you're expected to concentrate before you have a brain break, any kind of special measures that are put in place. Do they have extra time for tasks? Do they have questions simplified in exams or in assessments? When do they have one-to-one support? What visual supports do they have? So you'd have that book that you can have a look through, but I really want just a quick one page, and this is more for the adult to have a quick kind of scan at, probably before they start working with the child. Any strategies that help them cope with school life, so things like movement breaks, working alongside able peers, working alongside those great role models, so I can look at them and copy them and see what sort of thing to expect. So that's kind of a bit of an example. This is my family, key information you might want to talk about me, but also looking at finding out more about me, how to support me if I'm upset, how I communicate and how you can support me, give me information about communication supports, as I mentioned, things I enjoy and things that I don't, give me all that kind of key information. I said at the beginning about thinking about communication and kind of how to set up an expectation of communication before you start. Some schools, some preschools, have a homeschool communication book. And that may be appropriate, may be needed, particularly if we're thinking about transition, that first kind of half term, when there might be a lot of little notes going backwards and forwards and a lot of key information that you want to be shared. That book is for the adults. So that's for an opportunity for home to let school know any important or useful information. Things like has been up really early this morning, might be picking up got an appointment on Friday, that kind of information that needs to go into school to know about. And also then school would pop in there any important or useful information for parents. Maybe had a toileting accident, or I don't know, any it's going to be World Book Day on whatever, or get kind of, you'd have information more about what goes on generally in school. We'll go home, of course, on more general networks. So you might have an email system or a system like Tapestry, where that information about what's going on for the whole school. And this might be just in terms of a bit of information that the child won't remember to say when they get home. So for younger children, it's probably going to be about something that happened in their day, good or bad. I got a sticker for doing brilliant work. You've got a sticker on there, so you're going to be able to ask the child what they got it for, and you're going to know because it's going to be in the communication book. Or if they've had an accident or something happened like that. It may be used to request a meeting if you think something has come up at school and you want to meet with parents, or also gives parents a chance to say, oh, following that issue that you put in the book, is it possible for us to request a meeting? So thinking about how do parents go about requesting a meeting and having that agreed before you get into, oh, I need to speak to you about that, or how do we do that? I want that kind of system in place. Of course, for lots of schools now, it will be around emailing. But if you're working in the classroom, you often don't get to see your email after you get in the morning. But I will make sure I just check that book and we have that system in place to make sure it goes in and out as the child comes in and out. What I would be quite clear about, though, is that I wouldn't be saying it's something that needs to be filled in every day, and it's not a rundown of what's happened throughout the day. So you wouldn't have all the information. Oh, at 9 o'clock we did, because if somebody has to fill that level of information in, they're not going to have the chance to be effectively supporting your child. And I know that parents would like to know lots about what happens in school, all parents. And we'll come on to that in terms of a conversation diary, but this communication book is just about key important information, really. And it's just a note on there to make sure that we don't just put in there some of the bad things that have happened. Oh, if we had an accident or something happened around behaviour at break time, that might go in there. But also don't forget to put in, oh, but you did some great maths work in the afternoon. As a bit of a balance. So conversation diary, just linked to that, this is the thing that I would be suggesting happens between home and school. And this is for the child to share with others. So when I mentioned earlier on about taking conversation supports with you, this is something that I would expect most of my children to be using. It's for the child to share their news with others. So with their friends predominantly, but also with family. So this is where I'm going to tell you what I did at school today. And similarly, I'm going to take that in to tell school staff what I did at the weekend, or what I did at Rainbows or football club last night. It would normally include a visual. So it might be a picture that somebody's just quickly hand drawn. It might be a photo of something that's happened during the day, or it might be a copy of work or a copy of a drawing that they've done, or a bit of painting or writing. You can stick that in, and then you can write a sentence about it, and you'd write as if the child had said it themselves. So it might say, you might say to the child, oh, what do you want to put in your conversation diary today? Do you want to say that you did this lovely painting, or that you did this number work. Which one do you want to choose? Do you want to choose painting or numbers? And the child might choose, not say anything, and you might put in there, I did some painting. Brilliant. So when the child gets home, parents can say, oh, what did you do at school today? And the child prompted to get out their book, read it together. I did some painting. Brilliant. As the children move school, they might take more responsibility for that themselves, might tell you what they want you to write in there, might even have a go at writing in there themselves. In secondary schools, I often encourage the students just to have a diary, just a paper-based diary, where it's easy to find what page you're on, and you look in there and there's some key information in there just to prompt me, to remind me to talk to my friends at lunchtime about, did you see the final of Britain's Got Talent? I liked that, I wanted the whoever to win. Do you watch Britain's Got Talent? Who did you want to win? That kind of thing. And that's kind of where we're sharing that information around what happened. I didn't say actually at the beginning, I am a speech and language therapist. Is kind of my official background and training, and I've worked as part of a school support team alongside some specialist teachers for a number of years now. But in a previous life, many years ago, I used to be a teaching assistant working in a mainstream school supporting a pupil with Down syndrome. This was probably the most used resource and the biggest pain in my day, because it would get to 3 o'clock and I'd think, oh, I haven't done that conversation diary. Quick, what do you want to put in there? Do you want to put this picture of this lovely writing you did? Yeah, quick, to the photocopy, quick. Down there. But it really was so useful in terms of the child being able to share with others, and then had that resource, and I'd say, oh, we've got 5 minutes talking to your friends, or when you come in the morning, conversation diary, get that out, show your friends, see what information is in there. You can go back over pictures, show them your painting. You've got that resource. It really is very helpful. Thinking about vocabulary, our children obviously have speech and language delays. We have a strength as we grow up, get older, in terms of receptive vocabulary. Learning words, learning facts becomes a relative strength, but we are likely to be going into these new settings with some kind of missing vocabulary. And it might be that all children don't know these words yet, but they're going to pick them up very quickly. So they're going to come in for one visit and they're going to say, oh, these are called trays. This is where you put your work. And they're going to just remember that, having been told it once. We're really going to struggle with that information, and there might be some information that we've never heard before. I remember when my niece started school, she's in year 1, and I said to her, oh, when you go to school, you'll have you'll have a PE kit and a book bag. Do you know what a PE kit is? And she said, oh yes. I said, oh, do you? So I saw it on Topsy and Tim, and she just learned it from watching telly, which was very clever. But of course, our children may not have picked up on some of that vocabulary, and it may need a little bit more teaching. So when you're doing your transition visits and you're thinking about your transition visits and you're thinking about new settings, pay attention to any new vocabulary that may come up. So that may be equipment around. Do they know what a pen is? Do they know the difference between a pen and a pencil and a crayon? Do they know what a ruler is? Do they know what a tray is? What a peg is? Have they used a peg before? Put your coat on a peg. Do they know what that is? Do they know what a book bag is? Do they know PE kicks? If they don't know those words, they're not going to be able to follow instructions like go and get your book bag. What's that? I haven't learned that yet. Remember which one of these many bags I've got that is now. Thinking about maths equipment, textbooks, sketch pad, lockers, planners, just thinking what's going to be coming up that would be useful for me to know. What is tutor? What is a tutor? Who is my tutor? What on earth is tutor time? I've not done that before. That word hasn't come up for me before. Biology, physics, chemistry, food technology. What is learning support? What is a canteen? Any vocabulary you can identify and do a bit of work around before hitting that setting would be really helpful and would really support that smooth transition into that setting. I'm going to tutor. I know who I'm looking for. Let me look at my planner. I know what my planner is. I know how to read a planner. That's coming up in just a second. To look where I should be. What are some words that are going to come up in biology? What's some of the early topics going to be? What gets covered in biology? How do canteens work? Very quick at learning how canteens work. That was an image from Twinkl actually about some subject cards. We're just thinking about learning some of the vocabulary and then maybe doing a bit of a mind map about each subject, about what might be coming on there. And that might be a great thing that you're going to do on some of your additional visits. I'm going to go into meet my let's have a geography teacher. I'm going to ask my geography teacher, what sort of things do we learn in geography? Got a question, got it written down there, got my question to ask, and I'm going to fill in or ask them to put down some key information when I go on my visit to find out about that. If you move into secondary school, you might have this timetable. Do they know what it is and do they know how to use one? And spending a little bit of time over the next few weeks and over the summer about filling one in, about the sorts of things that you do. Could be at school, could be at home, could be about after school clubs. And you're thinking about, well, I need to know lesson 1 on a Thursday is, and how can I start to be able to find that information? Because again, if I know how to use one before I get into that new setting, I'm going to be hitting the ground running, if you like. You're not running. I'd also be thinking about how school manage behaviour, how they manage and reward, put the good and the bad, I don't know for you guys, but thinking about all the positives and what happens if somebody's not following those kind of school expectations. And again, if you know those systems, you can start pre-teaching them all. I can start giving you a plus point. I could starting to move you up onto the sunshine. Put on well, you've done a really great help. Oh, you've helped me do sort out the washing, or you've helped tidy up at preschool. I'm going to move you up on the sunshine. So they start to think, oh yeah, that's a really positive thing. Everybody talks about, oh look, you're on the sunshine today. Brilliant. What did you do? Made a note there. I have a little sort of visual. Really helpful. Have a think about, do they need adapting? For some children, then that's going to be very dependent on the child, and that's going to be something you want to be finding out about the child if they're coming into your setting. For some children, they'll need to be visual and they'll need to be happening there and then. So missing choosing time or golden time on a Friday, probably not going to make much difference to us on a Monday. Similarly, oh, you've got another behaviour point. Wow. How many have I got now? 253. Well, I've not seen one yet. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they mean. Isn't going to be that great at managing behaviour. So I want to be thinking about how we make them really concrete for our students. They may filter in to some of the school systems. So it might be once I get 10 ticks in my book or 10 points in my tally, then I get a plus point. Don't really know what that is, but I know when I get home tonight and parents say, oh, or I get to my next lesson, they say, oh, how many tally points have you got so far? I can open it up and go, well, look, I've already got 9. Brilliant. Yep. Tally as well is going to be important. Thinking about age appropriate motivators, particularly if we're thinking about transitioning into a new year group. Now's a really good time to think about, okay, are there any things that we think that was okay this year? Maybe it was even better 2 or 3 years ago. It's not necessarily what I would be expecting of my year 3 student, of my year 5 student, of my year 9 student. Now could be a good time to start to think about, this is what year fill in the blank students look like. This is what they do. You're going to be a year 5, a year 9, a reception student. This is what reception students do. This is what year 9 students do. So we're really clear with our students about what the expectation is going to be for them in September. And I've just put on the bottom there, sometimes people can well, when you look at your behaviour management system, you'll be looking at whatever motivates the child. But if you don't need to leave the class, that can be a real bonus to set up right from the very beginning. Our breaks or our motivators, our reward activities happen within class. Now, in reception, that might happen quite easily. Oh, yeah, you've done your job. Now you can choose what you're going to choose. Let's get your visual out. You choose. Brilliant. Off you go. You know where you're going. As I move through school, those rewards or motivators might be needing to become more age appropriate and may need to happen at the desk more. So it might be I can read my favourite story, I can go on the laptop or the iPad and do a maths program or whatever it might be, but not having to go out and come back in when often is a time that I don't want to come back in. It can be useful not to get into that in the first place. Always be thinking about promoting independence. I've talked a little bit about knowing the class rules and expectations in terms of that's going to support me to know what people are talking about and about knowing what the expectation is. It's also then going to help me be more independent in that time. If I've got a personal book or a social story that tells me exactly what I do when it's time to go to the toilet, I can look at that. Where are we going first? What the first thing you do? Or you ask to go to the toilet. What do you say? Toilet, please. Brilliant. And that is all laid out for them to look through, and they're supported. They've been through it lots of times. They know it. Often then they won't need to look at it at all. But in terms of developing that independence, having that visual there, think about teaching routines. So I know what is my getting ready at the end of the lesson, getting ready at home time routine. Here it is, 4 things I need to do. I have that as a visual to start with. And of course, over time, once I've learned it, I won't necessarily need it there, but I will need it in the first place. Think about teaching new environments. What's the rule in this class? Where do we sit? Do we sit at our desks to listen? Do we sit on the carpet to listen? Do we come in through a different door? Do we now hang our coats in a different place? Do we now have different bags? Do we now have lockers? Any kind of information around teaching me and targets around me being independent to manage that is going to be helpful. And thinking about planning inclusion in all school activities. So often we'll be thinking about what's going to be happening in the classroom, but we obviously also want to be thinking about what happens at lunchtime. Are there clubs? Are there after school clubs? Making sure we're included in school trips, school holidays, assessments, and planning for all of those, just like we're planning for transition. Oh, they're about targeting skills. So thinking about what skills we could be focusing on over the next few weeks and across the summer that's going to help our students be more independent, it's going to help them be more successful with transition. Things like managing snack time, feeding themselves, opening their own packets, peeling a banana. And if they can't do those things, asking a friend, help, Nana, brilliant, I can ask you for help. Managing a uniform, how do they get changed for PE? Can they tie a tie if they're going off to secondary school? Or tying shoelaces? Always be thinking, what skills could I be working on? What could be my next targets? Managing personal needs and preparing girls as they're approaching that kind of age where they're going to be starting a period. Rather than waiting until it started, we're going to be practicing changing things like pads without kind of all the mess before we get into that would be really, really helpful ahead of that stage. How are they getting in and out of school? Where are they dropped off to get across the playground? I mean, reception, of course, they're probably going to be dropped at the classroom door or at the kind of outside space outside of reception as they go in. But as you move through school, where are we going to be dropped off? I remember a parent saying to me in year 6, they were working really hard on dropping their child at the car park and their child walking into school in preparation for going to secondary school. And on the first day, the child got brought back 3 times by a well-meaning parent going, "Oh, what are you doing here? Where's your mum? Let's go and find them." "Oh, no, don't need you. I need a little note to take with me that says I'm going inside by myself." But thinking about preparing and developing those skills and making sure everybody knows what we're working on. If they're going on the bus, what do they do on the bus? That's the time that we often see a bit of behaviour and people haven't thought about, spent a lot of time preparing about what's going to happen in school, but what about when we get on the way to school and on the way back to school? Got some friends on there, want to communicate with my friends, what communication supports are on there, what games can I play on the bus? Where do they get, I've talked about get picked up, what's their route for going in? Reading a timetable or a planner, ordering food in a cafe, asking the canteen, the lunchtime supervision team for that meal, so they get used to requesting things ready for going into a canteen. I know lots of children who've managed to get 2 lunches. I think we worked the canteen quite quickly for the first half term until they've run out of money on their fingerprint or card. And then just in terms of thinking about continuing that successful transition, once you've got that in place, we've thought about all of that pre-learning and preparation to support transition, and then continuing that on into the new setting. I would be keen to think about agreeing beforehand or as part of transition when you're going to meet, so everybody has the same expectation of how often we're going to be meeting parents and school. Well, I would be thinking it's going to be half termly, would be my expectation in terms of setting new targets, reviewing targets, previous targets, and addressing anything that's been going on. How are you going to communicate any immediate concern or question? So talked about the communication book, might be on email. Who does it go between? If I've got a question as a parent, I need you to have let me know who is the person, who is my contact person, who is responsible for me, who do I email, and is the responsible person for emailing me back? Or am I going to copy in everybody? Then everybody's replying. So just thinking about setting that out as part of your transition. Then fostering those good working relationships, all just thinking about if we all know where we stand at the beginning, we're going to be able to support. That's going to mean that we don't have these unrealistic expectations, if you like, of what's coming up. That's a note for parents who may well have more training and knowledge than the school staff. You're obviously going to know all about education, but you might never have had a pupil with Down syndrome in your class before. That might be why you're here. But I would be keen to try and develop a relationship with parents where you can use them. They're probably going to have been on loads of training about Down syndrome and events about Down syndrome, and they're certainly going to have the most knowledge about their child and what works well for their child. So developing that kind of supporting each other, so school staff feel confident to say to parents, "Oh, we've got this happening on Friday. Just wanted to get your thoughts on it." Might be a note for the communication book. Anything you would recommend, or similarly that didn't work as well as I'd hoped it would. Can we have a chat about any ideas that you would have around there? And just a note to kind of remember to communicate all of the positives that happen as well. I think everybody, myself included, I only ever fill in a survey if I've got a complaint to make, but thinking about want to be feeding back all of the really great things that are happening as well, so that everybody has a really balanced view of the child and their day. Really, because we want this, don't we? We want to support that full school inclusion, fully included in school, in the classroom, in any clubs that are going on, in class assemblies, in playtimes, at trips. We're included in the whole lot. You might want to think about supporting friendships out of school. Supporting parents to be able to invite other children around, suggesting that you could hand a note over, making sure they're part of any kind of WhatsApp group that's going on. Think about feeding back to parents what the other children are interested in. What does the child play with the other children at school? Because that may well support interaction out of school. Making sure that other parents feel confident, and they might not. Similarly, they may never have come across a child with Down syndrome before and might be a bit nervous or a bit worried that they might say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. We just want to make sure that everybody is fully supported throughout that. Kind of taking that proactive lead. I have some groups I do for the 16 pluses, and we decided to introduce a WhatsApp group for over the summer. There was a lot of learning in there, which is doing a lot more of pre-teaching before we let loose on this on the group, I think, in terms of making sure that everybody knew the rules around. We did have rules around what is appropriate to go on a WhatsApp group and what's not appropriate to go on a WhatsApp group. And they're very good actually at supporting each other in if anybody makes a mistake. So really, thinking about good communication with school and parents from the beginning and setting up what that looks like as part of transition, getting things ready from day one. So from the first visit they come into school, making sure we're ready and we've got that visit prepared and planned, know what to expect. We obviously want to be realistic. It is going to be new for everyone. People are going to be, things are going to happen that don't go to plan. there are going to be some bumps in the road, I'm going to call them, but it's all about that kind of being flexible. How can we change that? How can we adapt to that? We're not going to do that the same again next time. It's not going to be about the child's going to suddenly do something different. We need to look at how our support is a bit different to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And of course, the child's needs are going to change throughout school, and you really want to be ready to work together on that.